Good morning, colleagues.
Good morning.
How are you all doing? How are you all doing? I want to hear your voice. How are you doing this particular morning or
We're
weekend
good,
morning?
thank you.
Fantastic, 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 fantastic. Good to see every one of you. How are you doing, Reina?
I'm very well, thank you.
Fantastic, fantastic. Good to know. Good to know. All right. Thank you very much. Colleagues, I decided to schedule this special weekend meeting because of some of the things we have to cover. We take up two important lecture, and after that, we'll have a class activity, which will be a kind of a debate. We are not going to a kind of create two divide the class into two sections, but individuals will offer their views with regards to topics that I will be raising. And of course, colleagues can, of course, give their views in terms of participation. That will be actually the mark for the debate mark for the semester. And before progressing, I would actually like to also apologize to you that I also decided to schedule this class because of our class that was aborted, our last class, because of the inauguration of our new chancellor. Senate members were requested to be in the procession. And being one of the Senate members of the University of Johannesburg, I have to be part of that procession to welcome our new chancellor, who was the former deputy president of South Africa, Dr. Punzila Ngoka. You know, so that was why our class couldn't hold. And I think I explained that to one of the students when the student contacted me. Actually, I thought the event would be maybe a short one, but considering the profile of the person who is being inaugurated, it was actually, it took, in fact, the event ended almost close to 9 o'clock in the evening, you know. So that is why it's okay. Let me cover up with regards to today's class, and of course, we'll cover other events. And also, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I have also released, in fact, the entire textbook, which is the manuscript of the recommended textbook. For most of you who said you have not been able to access the textbook, for you to read. I want you to read from the last slide I sent to you was up to chapter 13. So you have to just read chapter 13 to the last part of that particular book. That is chapter 14 to chapter 21, I think so, of the book. Like I told you, it was prepared like a workshop, you know, just to familiarize yourself with everything around the diversity, you know, in terms of knowing more about diversity. I believe so far you have been able to actually understand and grasp so many issues and intricacies around diversity management and what it entails and how to go about it and what diversity is not and what diversity is, you know, because we have been talking about so many things, what diversity is, although we did not specify it as a topic. But I know that some years back, I did ask some of my students. Now we have spoken about what diversity is not. What is diversity? What diversity is? Can I know what diversity is? And we started enumerating it. We were even able to get more than 30 feedback in terms of, I asked them to use one word to describe, each one person to use a word to describe what diversity is. And many came with so many views based on what we have touched in the class. Some say diversity is patient, and of course it's patient. Patient to listen to the other colleague and understand their view. Another aspect is diversity is understanding others. Of course, diversity is understanding others. And of course, another aspect of diversity is compassion. So many things started prompting up what the student can actually speak about diversity. So many things: patience, compassion, understanding, caring, loving. So many things started, of course, emerging from our discussion. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, this morning we will touch on a very critical issue. We have spoken about laws related to diversity in South Africa. Of course, the Employment Equity Act, and of course, the Affirmative Action Act. And of course, last week also we went deeper into affirmative action related topics, and of course, issues around also disabilities, issues, in the workplace. And also, of course, we have also covered why more women are now trooping into the workplace or joining the labor force, So all this we have covered, and in fact, we have covered the nitty-gritty of diversity. And I think I also highlighted also issues around what is known as glass ceiling, which is, of course, a kind of a hindrance or a kind of a barrier to women and minorities from climbing in the ladder or for climbing to the higher hierarchies within organization, which is from climbing the ladders of an organization to the top. Those are barriers, which is called glass ceiling. And I need you also to understand that, of course, when we talk about glass ceiling, the definition seems to be to have actually emerged from America, and of course, for the fact that the blacks were the minority in America. So that is why the definition was actually shaped in that format. Otherwise, when we talk about glass ceiling in Africa, it could be also defined as, of course, barriers or hindrances to women, and of course, a majority of South Africans, which are the blacks in South Africa, from, of course, rising to the top within the organizational hierarchy. So sometimes also we have to actually be very, very careful in terms of some of the definition, because, of course, some of this knowledge and some of these textbooks were, of course, borrowed from America ideas. And of course, we see, of course, authors in Africa and other places trying to reinforce that. But if you take a critical perspective, you will see that, okay, to a certain extent, there should be a need of how we, of course, tweak or a kind of adapt most of this definition to suit our own circumstances in Africa. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, this morning we'll be talking about issues also related to equal employment opportunities. Of course, how it applies to America, and of course, you can get a feel of comparing it with, of course, employment equity of South Africa. And of course, some of the topics that I wrote from there are, of course, in your recommended textbook, topics like sexual harassment, topics like discrimination, which I have also shared in the class. And I remembered I have also shared a lot of slides. In fact, yesterday, I was busy shifting some slides. I was busy adding some slides to the slide in your Blackboard. Because I noticed that Stefan have actually added some of the slides we covered before the short break. He has added them to additional reading instead of putting them on the slide. And when I check the Blackboard, so I have tried to re-upload those materials on that slide, but also still left it in the additional reading column in case some students did not see they can of course see it under the slides. So I think I was trying to polish that yesterday because of course your exam is fast approaching, and I have actually released your exam papers, but I'm waiting for you to submit your assignment so that it can be released. Of course, you can advise me if you want me to testify to release it while you are busy doing assignment, but I don't want people to be over anxious or be full of anxiety, while doing one particular assignment, another one is still waiting for them. Definitely, like I told you, it should be a kind of not a sitting, physical sitting exam. It should be like your previous examinations under organizational leadership, where, of course, you have to respond to some of the questions, typing it and submitting online. It should be an online exam instead of a physical exam. All right. So far, any question, colleagues? Any question? Okay, everyone. Okay, everyone concur with me. Thank you very much for concurring. All right. Great, great, great. Okay, cool. Thank you very much, Gaboreba. Yeah. All right. Great. Colleagues, like I said this morning, let me first of all start from one of the lectures I thought we have covered. I'm just coming now. Chef 5. Let's see. And 5. Right. Diversity management. Articles. All right. Cool. I'm just uploading the files. Just give me some seconds. All right. While it's uploading. Mahapi, you are welcome. But don't leave the class because we have an activity today, so everybody should be in the class. If you are not in the class today, well, you have yourself to blame with regards to the activities that will be, of course, attracting some marks for a semester mark. All right. Okay. Another aspect. Right, chapter 3. All right. Cool. All right, great. So let's just first of all start with this particular topic. I know that we have touched on it a little bit, but just reflecting a little bit because it will be tied to some of the topics we'll be covering today. All right. Great. Which is, of course, a topic on raising the issue of discrimination in the workplace. Raising an issue of discrimination in the workplace. And one thing we have to actually know is that in the workplace, we must have one way or the other face issues related to discrimination. There are instances where we must have felt or perceived discrimination, either as a result of race or stemming from race, or discrimination stemming from our gender, or discrimination stemming from our age, or discrimination stemming from our national origin. Sometimes we encounter that. It can come in a very aggressive way or sometimes in a subtle way, in just small ways. But one way or the other, we must have experienced discrimination. And I don't know if it was something I was sharing with some of my students some time back, when all of a sudden the HR department of UJ called me and told me that I'm receiving a lesser salary compared to what I'm supposed to be receiving as a full professor. And that, as a result, there was, of course, an automatic increase in my salary, So that is to say that it could be that when I was promoted, probably somebody have placed me at a lower notch in terms of my salary package, But now it took the HR to realize this, compare my salary as a full professor and some people who just became full professors. And they were able to let me know that I was a kind of short charge. Well, it could be a mistake, but that could be a deliberate issue of discrimination. Can you see? So that is another good example. And there are instances where, of course, you may be also attacked, either because of your race or because of your gender, in the workplace. And in most of these, in my almost 20 years of working in different South African universities, I have experienced one or two of such kind of tendencies, in terms of discrimination. In fact, I keep on telling people that was the reason why also I left my former institution. The fact that I was contributing, I was the second highest in terms of research output. But when promotion comes, somehow they forget that I'm there. But when they are proclaiming the research output, my name is always surfacing, And on the basis of that, one day I threw my CV to Eugene. And of course, Eugene grabbed me with all passion. And that was the end. I just sent my resignation letter and, in fact, advised my former university that I don't want any negotiation, that I have accepted the UJ offer in good faith, you see. So that can, of course, be considered as an issue of discrimination, that people cannot, of course, retain their best talents because of what they feel about a particular person, race, or of course national origin, or whatsoever. You see, so one way or the other we receive that in subtle ways, or sometimes also in aggressive ways. When somebody now physically attack you because he feels that, oh, we are not supposed to be existing in this space, or why are you promoted fast, or why should you be achieving what you are achieving, considering the race that you came from or the gender that you came from. You see instances of this in the workplace, and all these are all issues revolving around diversity. You see. So that is that, and that is why raising an issue of discrimination is very important. How do you raise an issue of discrimination? I know I've touched this a little bit, but I felt it will also be necessary to touch it once again. So in order for one to raise an issue of discrimination, the first thing you do is think about the right person to whom you could safely disclose the matter to. And you say, think about the person. Think about the person who you can disclose the matter to. And I give instance, the time also I felt like instances of discrimination in my workplace. I knew who I called, and I spoke to the person how I felt. And to a great extent, my speaking out saved me from so many atrocities, I must say, but I know where I'm coming from. So we all face this one way or the other. So think about the right person to whom you could safely disclose the matter to. The person should be approachable, and also somebody that will listen to you, with regards to the issue. I see. Person should be approachable, and also somebody that will listen to you with regards to the issue of discrimination that you are about to raise. Number two there is, of course, consider whether you need to disclose the issue to a person that is from the same stereotypical group or stereotype group. For instance, if the person that is discriminating against you is a blind person, then it may be necessary that you talk to another blind person. If the issue is about a blind person, then it might be better to disclose to another blind person as they understand the situation of the other person. Can you see? So disclose by providing not only the issue, but also adding the facts of the situation. Can you see? You have to put facts down. You have to put facts down. Can you see? And of course, like in my own case, like I told you, I was able to put facts down. And in fact, the facts were actually seen visibly by authorities in the institution. And that saved me. That saved me. Can you see? Because sometimes when you are discriminated upon, there are instances where, in fact, the person bullying you may want to pretend or present the case in such a way that you are the bully, or you are the person that is actually perpetrating the wrongs. Can you see? There are instances. But if you can have your facts, documented facts, can you see that this is not a case of anything genuine, but a case of witch hunting as a result of the race or the gender or the age or the demographic grouping that you belong. Can you see? Disclose by providing not only the issue, but also adding the facts of the situation. And of course, refrain from becoming emotional about the situation. Can you see? Don't become emotional. Can you see? Don't become emotional about the situation. Just retain your facts. Can you see? I remember when I was preparing my document in my own instance, like I was telling you, I have some other senior colleagues that I was able to present my matter and, of course, present my write-up regarding the issue affecting me. And there are instances where a very senior colleague, in fact, a former deputy vice chancellor, advised me, a former, not elsewhere, advised me, no, don't be emotional about this. Remove this, remove that, remove this, remove that. Just go straight to the fact. Go straight to your facts. Don't show pains. Don't show that you want sympathy. Don't show, just present your facts. Refrain from becoming emotional about the situation. If the person you are speaking to denies the issue, if the person you are speaking to regarding the issue denies the issue, recognize his or her behavior as ignoring the issue and prepare to challenge their assumptions and frames of reference. You see? So definitely with regards to this kind of question, students should expand more based on experiences and, of course, examples of discrimination and how you have, of course, handled it in different within different circumstances. All right. And of course, when we talk about discrimination, there are so many instances where we witness or we face or we notice issues of discrimination in the workplace. For instance, with regards to the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, which is, of course, a good example of course, the Department of Labor in South Africa, with regards to employment equity, because the law of equal employment opportunity in the U.S. is the same thing as Employment Equity Act of South Africa. So in U.S. it is called EEO, that is Equal Employment Opportunity, while in South Africa it is called Employment Equity. Can you see? So the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission find the following discriminatory practices over which an individual or group of individuals can make a claim of discrimination, which are also in harmony with South African Employment Equity Act and unfair labor practices in the Labor Relations Act of South Africa. Can you see? And of course, instances where one can, of course, notice the visibility of discrimination include hiring and firing of employee, that is hiring, recruiting, and dismissal of employee. Another aspect, compensation of employee. Can you see? Where some employees are more compensated than the others that started the job at the same time. Assignments, issues related to assignment of duties to employee. Some can be, of course, sent to a more luxurious and lucrative assignment, while others are kept perpetually in, of course, pauperized or poor assignments, you know. And of course, classification of employees. Of course, there are instances where people are classified on the basis of their race, you know. And of course, people can be placed in a very difficult employment circumstances as a result of those classifications. And of course, and discrimination can also be reflected in areas like transfer of employees from one branch to the other or from one location to the other. Discrimination can also reflect in terms of promotion. I gave you my instances with my former university where I know I was performing that promotion was stalled, you know, because of maybe perception, with regards to either race or of course, whatever other reasons. And of course, issues related to layoff, which is of course also tied to firing of employee. Of course, firing may be different from, of course, layoff. Firing can come as a result of certain misdemeanor by an employee, but layoff can come when the organization is facing certain economic circumstances or employees have become a little bit redundant, that of course the organization have to take a decision with regards to laying off some of the workers. And of course, with issues of recall of employee, when you lay off an employee as a result of economic reason, there are also laws backing them that when economy improves, you can recall most of those employees back to the organization. So also discrimination can of course surface when recalling some of the employees back, where certain people may be recalled as a result of their race or gender, or of course national origin, and of course as a result of their age or whatsoever within the workplace, of course. So another aspect, of course, where one can, of course, witness issues of discrimination is with regards to job advertisement, where, of course, certain people are, of course, specifically mentioned as maybe as people that are actually needed for that particular job. For instance, a job that specifically says only white males needed, or a job that specifically says only black females needed. Those can also, somebody can of course take up such issues in terms of course claiming that it is an issue of discrimination. And of course, with regards to recruitment, also discrimination can surface with regards to recruitment. And we have seen instances of several litigations as a result of discrimination with regards to recruitment, both in the police service of South Africa and, of course, both also in other services, government parastatals, and, of course, within the public service. And of course, discrimination can also surface with regards to testing. You see, testing, of course, in terms of the kind of test that, of course, first and foremost, the kind of test that employees can undergo, for instance, where they say IQ test or psychological test, discrimination can surface. If a white person is testing a black person, there are certain things the white person may not know about the black race. There you see, discrimination can surface in terms of certain behaviors. And of course, the same thing may apply when a black psychologist or a black person is also assessing a white person. There are certain behaviors and certain tendencies that the black psychologist may misread or may have a kind of misgiving with regards to the other race. You see, now that is apart. Now with testing also, when it comes to also written test, it can also become an issue of discrimination because, of course, for instance, in terms of South Africa, there were people that were, of course, ahead in terms of both mathematical knowledge or statistics or all the rest. And in fact, that of course can also be reflected in some of our arguments who says that men are better in mathematics than female. And of course, that can also be reflected considering, of course, the previous educational system in South Africa, which of course surfaced in one of the articles that I wrote to challenge Judah, which has to do with Bantu education. So definitely, it takes a very hard work for a student from a very remote school in Mthatha to actually compete with somebody in some of the high schools in Johannesburg or in Gauteng. Can you see? So those are issues, those are issues with regard to testing. So that can even be taken as a case of discrimination when you want people from previously disadvantaged to truly compete in terms of writing a test for a particular job application. Can you see? So that can, of course, also be taken as a sign of discrimination. And of course, we have seen such kind of things surfacing also in terms of recruitment of students at UJ. And I think I was one of the persons that actually argued with my colleagues that I don't want to do any test in terms of recruiting my master's and PhD students, because sometimes the test can be discriminatory. Can you see? And I was able to hold on to that for 6 years, that I was the qualification leader of employment relations at master's and PhD level in my department. Yeah, while others were doing tests to recruit students, I told them I'm not doing any test to recruit any of the students. I will assess the student based on the interview and, of course, their writing skills, not a test. Can you see? So the test at times can be controversial. You must keep that in your mind. And of course, use of complaint facility. There could be discrimination with regards to use of complaints facility. Some people can be holy cows. Can you see? Nobody speaks to them, nobody confronts them when they use the complaint facilities. But some may be restricted. And of course, this brings about the topic of in-group and out-group within organization to mind. You remember when we touched the topic of in-group and out-group with regards to leadership. And of course, discrimination can of course be visible with regards to training and of course apprenticeship program or mentorship program. Can you see? Apprenticeship, which of course include mentorship program. Can you see? Whereby of course, for instance, I was telling some students with regards to mentorship of a female, there may be instances where a male leader may not be willing to mentor a female, a married female, for issues related to scandal, so that somebody doesn't say, oh, they are actually having some special relationship apart from that mentorship. So some men, at least, try to keep off on such kind of issues. That can, of course, be taken as discrimination towards the female genders. You see, and of course, the issue of the fact, like I also told you, that it becomes also more difficult for female genders because some of the female who have arrived at leadership position may not also want to empower their fellow females, which is what I refer to as Queen Bee syndrome. Queen Bee syndrome. A Queen Bee is that person who arrives at leadership and surrounds herself with male genders. Can you see? That is how the Queen Bee behaves. When you see the Queen Bee flying, the Queen Bee is surrounded by soldiers, all males, and she is in the middle. Can you see? No female. Can you see? So that is the Queen Bee syndrome. So that is also a reflection with some of the female leaders who have actually move up in the organizational leadership or hierarchy of the organization. Sometimes they tend to hinder other female from rising through the ladders of the organization. Can you see? Or rising to an upper echelon of the organization. Why? Because they see competition. Because there is, of course, an act that protects women empowerment. So, of course, a woman who have actually gotten to the peak of the career may not want another competitor, another woman who will be empowered to either become also another director somewhere. Can you see? So, some of these tendencies also reflect with regards to discrimination, gender discrimination with regards to training, and of course, apprenticeship program within the workplace. And of course, discrimination can also be visible with regards to benefits that are shared. The organization, fringe benefits, can you see? Where, of course, some people receive more benefit than the others, even though they are, of course, contributing the same thing to the organization or contributing the same efforts and labor to the organization. You see. And of course, when you talk about this, of course, sometimes also relate to equity theory of motivation. You see, where some people perceive inequity in the workplace as a result of certain people being more rewarded than the others. And of course, discrimination can also be visible or reflected with regards to pay packages. I have also given an example with myself with regards to pay. And of course, discrimination can also be reflected in retirement plans. And of course, with regard to disability leaves, can you see? So we can see discrimination in most of these different situations. And of course, other terms and conditions. Discrimination can also be visible in other terms and conditions of employment, such as harassment on the basis of religion, harassment on the basis of gender, harassment on the basis of national origin. I have given you instances of harassment. Can you see? Harassment on the basis of disability, harassment on the basis of age, harassment on the basis of retaliation against an individual for filing a charge or participating in an investigation. Can you see? In an investigation related to the organization. All these should be included in the list of discrimination in the workplace. All right, great. So, colleague, with that, we'll round up with this topic of discrimination, and we'll move to the next topic, the next slide. All right. All right. Great colleagues. Now we are going to talk about the legal environment of equal employment opportunity and of course safety. Although safety is not actually critically tied to your diversity management topic, but of course instances, of course, we talk about instances of assignment and instances of course, a transfer. An employment can, of course, an employee can actually be placed in a very unsafe working environment as a result of his race or his gender or her gender or some other attributes. Can you see? So that could become an issue of diversity. All right. Now, with regards to this particular topic, the legal environment, with regards to equal employment opportunity, that is that of America. And of course, you will also see, of course, the topic in your recommended textbook when you read the other chapters that I asked you to go through. All right. Now, first and foremost, we have to start with the U.S. legal system. U.S. legal system, of course, there are 3 branches of the legal system in the U.S. And one of them is the executive branch. Who are the executives? Can I hear you? Who are the executive branch of the legal system? Or what is the executive branch of the legal system? Colleagues, fast, I want to hear you. It's our class, not mine alone. Are we still in the class? Who are the executive branch? Please unmute your mic and respond, please. Okay. Fantastic. Mama Bolo, thanks a lot. Mama Bolo said the president, and of course, the president not cabinet, Mama Bolo, just the president, the provincial executive, and of course, recently in Gaten, of course, we have now a new premier in Gaten, all right, from the ANC, taking over, of course, back from the DA, you know. So those are a good example of the executive branch of the legal system. Executive branch, that is the president. The president, and of course, in some countries, the governors, and of course, in some countries, the provincial executives. Those are the executive branch. The premiers, those are the executive branch. Can you see? Those are the executive branch. Now, who are the legislative branch? Parliament. Fantastic. Thanks a lot. The parliament are the, of course, legislative branch. They are the ones that make law. Can you see? They are the ones that make law. All right. So that is why you see every time fight and tussle in the parliament with different parties arguing, and of course, particularly EFF, ready to fight and ready to, of course, leave the parliament anytime because things didn't go the way they wanted. All right. So that is the parliament. They are the lawmakers. And it takes a lot of difficult arguments and tussles before laws are finally made. All right. Then, of course, who are the judiciary branch? Judiciary branch. Of course, this the court. Can you see? The U.S. court and the judiciary, and of course, some of the judiciaries are also include the police force, you know, that of course help to execute the laws that have been carried out or that have been pronounced from the judiciary branch. So, of course, these are the three branches of the legal system in any country, and of course, U.S. for that matter. Can you see? In any country, these are the three branches: the executive, the legislatures, and of course, the judiciary. All right. Of course, the judiciary. We progress. So equal employment opportunity, which is EEO in the United States of America, which is of course employment equity in South Africa. Can you see? So equal employment opportunity is of course the government's attempt in America to ensure that all individuals have an equal chance for employment regardless of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. Can you see? And of course, there are certain acts, laws, executive orders that have reinforced equal employment opportunity in the United States of America. One of them is, of course, the first one there is the 13th Amendment Act, which of course emphasized or which of course brought about the abolition of slavery. Can you see? The abolition of slavery, the ending of slavery, slave trade and slavery. You know the issue about slave trade. Of course, many of our forefathers were taken from Africa and of course from different parts of the world to work in sugarcane plantation in America and Europe. Can you see? But of course, as a result of agitations, civil rights movement, of course, the 13th Amendment Act was actually promulgated to abolish slavery, and of course, slave trade. And with regards to slave trade, I think I remember joking with some of my students in the MBA class during my time supporting TUT in the business school. When I also jokingly made them to understand that it seems to me that the slave master came to Africa to actually carry out or to actually take most of the most able-bodied men in Africa, our manpower, to US to work in most of those farms and sugarcane plantation. Which is why when you look at some of the Black Americans, they are heavy, hefty, and strong. So I was just joking with my student, maybe we that were left behind were the weak ones. Because in those days during slave trade, they looked for more heady, more hefty people to work in their farms. So when they see people that are very feeble, they say, no, this one can remain in Africa. You see. So I was just joking with my master's student, MBA student, with regards to that. And of course, when you look at the reality of things, the way, of course, Africa is shaping out without much development, and one can actually drive that, of course, thesis home, or one can actually drive that argument home. That of course, certainly some of the most intelligent and some of the most efficient, able-bodied human beings were actually taken away from Africa to work as slaves in America. And of course, another act that reinforced issues of equal employment opportunity in the US was, of course, the 14th Amendment Act, which provides equal protection for all citizens and require due process in state actions. You see, from abolition of slavery, then now the next act, which is, of course, the 14th Amendment Act, provides equal protection for all citizens. Yes, equal protection, because before certain people were protected and others were left at will to face whatever they want to face in society. And of course, you can remember the stories of even launching of Black men and women in the public spaces in America, can you see? And of course, the deprivation of course, certain Black people from sitting in the bus in those days in America. And of course, it took one woman to say, I will not stand, can you see, because I was here before you in the US. And that became a strong revolt among the Blacks, can you see. So, 14th Amendment Act provides equal protection for all citizens and require due process in state action. All right. So these are all some of the amendments that were, of course, reinforcing equal employment opportunity in the United States of America. And of course, yeah. Yeah, I think you have a point. You have a point. Even up to today, certainly some of the act has not actually reinforced what it was actually instituted to attend to. I remember of recent we had a PhD student from America. Who was actually under our mentorship, and he was actually writing his thesis on that when he, of course, had a stroke, and he had to discontinue his studies with us at UJ. So I totally agree with your perspective on that. All right. I'm just responding to one of the issues raised by one of the students, one of our colleagues here. All right. Now, another aspect that, of course, reinforces equal employment opportunity in the U.S. is, of course, the Civil Rights Act of 1866 and 1871. Can you see? Which is, of course, the right that gave people opportunity, of course, to protest within America. And you see, Civil Rights Act, and as a result of that, it of course reinforced issues of equal opportunities in America. And of course, another congressional legislation. When we say Congress, congressional, it simply means parliament in America. Can you see? The America operates in terms of Congress, which is, of course, the legislation. Can you see? So when we talk about Equal Pay Act of another aspect is Equal Pay Act of 1963, which is, of course, that men and women should be paid equally for the same job. And you see, that women should not be disadvantaged because they are female doing the same job like their male counterpart. And there are instances, even in the US and of course in Africa, where women are short-charged and not paid what they merit to be paid or what they are due to be paid because they are women or because of the specific gender they emerge from. You see, which is, of course, what has brought about issues of gender discrimination in South Africa. You see. And that is why, of course, you see that also in current South Africa, the white female were included as previously disadvantaged individuals. You see, which is, of course, a reflection that even during the apartheid, the white females were also disadvantaged to a certain extent. You see. So another congressional legislation that, of course, reinforced the issues of equal employment opportunity is, of course, the Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which, of course, emphasized general equality in the workplace and, of course, in society. And, of course, another congressional legislation that, of course, reinforced or that is tied to equal employment opportunity is, of course, Age Discrimination in Employment Act. That no individual should be discriminated on the basis of age with regards to employment or with regards to participation in the labor force. And of course, another aspect, congressional legislation that reinforced equal or that reinforces equal employment opportunity in the US was, of course, Rehabilitation Acts of 1973, which, of course, takes into consideration the need to accommodate disabled individuals in the workplace. And, of course, another congressional legislation reinforcing equal opportunity in equal employment opportunity in the US is, of course, the Vietnam era Veteran Adjustment Act, which was, of course, also take into consideration the need of disabled American soldiers that were returning from Vietnam War. The act was actually promulgated in 1974. And of course, another aspect, congressional legislation that reinforces, of course, the Equal Employment Opportunity Act was, of course, the Pregnancy Discrimination Act, which, of course, protect women that are pregnant and in the workplace. That women that are pregnant should not, of course, be discriminated because of their specific nature of being mothers of children or carrying our babies, you see. So pregnancy discrimination. And then, of course, in South Africa, of course, we have so many issues that, of course, support women, like maternity leave and so many other employment-related issues that covers women and protect women, basically or specifically taking into consideration their gender status. And of course, another congressional legislation that, of course, reinforces Equal Employment Opportunity Act is, of course, the Civil Rights Act of 1991. The Civil Rights Act of 1991, of course, reinforces the fact that everyone should actually be equally treated in the workplace with regards to recruitment, promotion, and, of course, pay. And, of course, another congressional legislation that reinforces equal employment opportunity is, of course, American with Disability Act of 1990, which, of course, also re-emphasized the fact that people with disability should be reasonably accommodated within the workplace. And of course, apart from disability, and with regards to disability, when we define disability, it's good to give some context to disability. According to Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, which is of course a commission that looks, or that is of course overseeing the equal employment opportunity in America, define disability as a physical or mental impairment. A physical or mental impairment that substantially limit one or more major life activities or activity. And of course, there must be a record or past history of such an impairment. One must not just be impaired, but one must have a record or the history of such an impairment, and or being regarded as having a disability by an employer, whether you have one or not, usually in terms of hiring, firing, and of course demotion. You see, so usually in terms of, this should be off, not off. Usually in terms of hiring, firing, and of course demotion. All right. Now, of course, apart from the congregational legislations, there's also executive orders. Can you see? Executive orders are orders taken by, of course, the president of the country, the president of America, probably in period of emergency or when there is no consensus in parliament. And so president can take what is known as an executive order. And of course, the first executive order that, of course, reinforces the issue of equal employment opportunity in the US was that of Executive Order 11246, which was, of course, an order that was actually given by President Johnson. The order prohibits government contractors from discrimination. And you see, Executive Order 11246 prohibits government contractors from discrimination. That is to say that government contractors must not discriminate on the basis of sex, on the basis of race, on the basis of gender, on the basis of course, national origin, etc. And of course, another executive order that reinforces the Equal Employment Opportunity Act in the USA is that one that was promulgated by President Richard Nixon in the US. And of course, the executive order is Executive Order 11468 by President Richard Nixon. And of course, the executive order, states that government employment policy should be based on merit and fitness. You see, the executive order emphasized that government policy should be based on merits and, of course, fitness. That is to say that it should not be based on nepotism, it should not be based on cronyism, it should not be based on, of course, race, it should not be based on, of course, bullying or favoritism or other workplace anomalies. All right. We progress. Now, who are the enforcers of equal employment opportunity in the US? In South Africa, the enforcement of employment equity is that of the Department of Labor. And of course, definitely the Department of Labor appoints a commissioner that oversees most of those activities in terms of monitoring and, of course, overseeing that employment equity is properly taken care of in most organizations. So in America, there are two agencies that are responsible for the enforcement of these laws. And, of course, the executive orders in the US. The first agent is, of course, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, which, of course, I have mentioned earlier to you. And the second agent is, of course, Office of the Federal Contract Compliance Background in the United States of America. Now, with regards to Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, their three major responsibilities is one, to investigate and resolve discrimination complaint. When discrimination complaint is raised in the organization or in any organization, they investigate the issue and also make effort to resolve the issue, the discrimination complaint in the organization in South Africa. So if you have an issue of discrimination, definitely you can write to them and, of course, submit your claims and, of course, your evidences to support your claims. All right. And, of course, on the basis of what was also given to them, of course, they also play the role of gathering information. Not only information related to plaintiff complaints or complainants' information, but also they gather information related to diversity issues in organizations in the USA. You see, they also gather information related to the constituents of the labor force within a given organization. You see, so they gather information related to issues affecting employees from the standpoint of diversity in most organizations in America. And, of course, the next one is the issue guidelines. Based on the information they gather, they issue guidelines to organizations to address issues of diversity. You see. And, of course, guidelines have to, of course, give them time to comply. You see. And, of course, make sure that they meet target at intervals. You see. So those are, of course, the major responsibilities of Equal Employment Opportunity Commission in the United States of America, as compared, of course, to the Department of Labor in South Africa, constituting, of course, a commissioner to oversee most of those issues of diversity and, of course, discrimination in workplaces in South Africa. All right. And, of course, another, of course, agent of the U.S. Government that, of course, oversee issues of discrimination in the workplace is, of course, Office of the Federal Contract Compliance Program. And, of course, they have three roles to play, or three components. One is that they utilize analysis. Can you see? They utilize analysis, utilization of analysis, which is, of course, a comparison of workforce with available labor supply. They compare the workforce of organizations with the available labor supply in order to see whether, of course, there is, of course, injustice with regards to recruitment and, of course, with regards to the different occupational level people are occupying from diverse from the demographic profile of the nation. And, of course, on the basis of that, they set goals and timetables for organization to address any anomaly or any challenges with regards to issues of discrimination and, of course, or inequality within organizations. And, of course, the Office of the Federal Contract Compliance Program also take action steps. You see, if those goals and timetables are not met. You see. So the Office of the Federal Contract compliance program also normally undertake annual audit of government contractors. You see, annual audit government contractors. All right. We'll progress. We're not going to talk about the types of discrimination. There are majorly 3 types of discrimination. You see, the first one is known as disparate treatment. The second one is known as disparate impact. And of course, the third one is known as reasonable accommodation. You see, reasonable accommodation. And of course, in our discussion, we have spoken about most of these things related to reasonable accommodation or desperate impact, and of course, desperate treatment with regards to issues of discrimination, of course, or diversity in our organizations. Even if we have not mentioned them specifically, but we have now mentioned them, and you will come to understand what desperate treatment, desperate impact, and of course, reasonable accommodation truly means. With regards to desperate treatment exists when individuals in similar situations are treated differently. You see, it exists when individuals in similar situations are treated differently based upon their race, religion, sex, national origin, age, or disability. You see, age or disability. And of course, it has more to do with, of course, somebody claiming that a particular employee has a bona fide occupation qualification that makes one to discriminate between a particular person and the other. Can you see? For instance, there could be, of course, an employment with regards to issues of race or issues of sex, where, of course, an employment or an employer requires the service of an Indian chef, for instance, can you see, to be in part of their restaurants. Definitely, he can actually argue that this person was actually recruited because of the specific trait that the person has. Although the employment is advertised to every person, but a particular person has a bona fide occupational qualification to function in that role. And of course, we have seen, of course, some of the employment advertisement where maybe a white person who, of course, knows that more of the customers are white can, of course, mention that a white female needed. You see. Certainly, of course, the employer may, of course, argue to a certain extent that this employment actually requires a particular profile with regards to the service that person may be providing. You see. So those are issues regarding desperate treatment. People can, of course, also be treated on the basis of religion. For instance, with regards to halal food, someone may need a Muslim chef. Can you see? Who knows how to prepare halal food? Can you see? So these are issues related to bona fide occupational qualification, where someone argues that a particular employee has the bona fide occupational qualification to occupy a position within the workplace. And of course, some of the laws that are reinforcing that are the law of UAW versus Johnson Control in Continental. And of course, another law, of course, is that of McDonnell Douglas versus Green. These are just a kind of case laws that, of course, support issues with regards to bona fide occupational qualification of an employee to occupy a specific role on the basis of either race, color, religion, sex, national origin, age, or disability status. All right. Or for instance, if a particular occupational position was specifically advertised for a disabled person, and of course, the organization have conditioned that particular position to reasonably accommodate a disabled person. Definitely, an able person cannot start contesting that position is supposed to be for him when it was actually specifically conditioned for a disabled person. Definitely, the organization can then argue that, of course, this advertisement or this position was meant for a disabled person, and the disabled person have a bona fide occupational requirements or qualification to occupy that particular position. That is what is referred to desperate treatment, which of course is when individuals in similar situations are treated differently based upon race, color, religion, sex, and national origin, age, and of course disability status. All right. The same thing also applies to an occupation that advertises for able people when they say, yeah, we want somebody who is agile, energetic. And of course, a disabled person cannot sue the organization for mentioning that they need an agile and energetic employee because they themselves are disabled. Because there are certain work that, of course, a disabled person cannot work or function in, can you see? So definitely that can, of course, be considered as, of course, issues of desperate treatment as a result of the bona fide qualification that a particular individual has to take over or to occupy a job role. All right, we progress. And of course, a good example, bona fide occupational qualification, BFOQ. It's a job qualification based on race. Job qualification based on race. In fact, I have already explained it. I believe it's clear. Based on race, sex, religion, etc., that an employer accepts is necessary qualification for the job. You see? So the example of cases, of course, of course, UAW versus Johnson in Continental and McDonnell Douglas Cobb versus Gray. All this, of course, reinforced issues around, of course, a bona fide occupational qualification. All right. We progress. The next aspect with regards to discrimination, another aspect of discrimination is what is known as disparate impact. Disparate impact. Can you see? Disparate impact. Can you see? Disparate impact occurs. Disparate impact occurs when a facially neutral employment practices disproportionately exclude a protected group or a protected individual from employment opportunities. Where, of course, when a facially neutral, from the face value, one may see neutrality in terms of the advertisement. Can you see? But within that advertisement, there are intricacies that can, of course, hinder a particular individual from accessing that particular job opportunities, either as a result of previous disadvantages or as a result of the gender that that person belongs to. You see, disparate impact occurs when a facially neutral employment practice disproportionately excludes a protected group from employment opportunity. For instance, with regards to South Africa, the protected groups are the blacks, which of course include the Indian color, and of course, to a great extent, the whites, white females. Sorry. So those are the protected group. Can you see? But when a facially neutral employment practice disproportionately excludes these individuals, it is known as disparate impact. Can you see? For instance, in America, they have what they call forfeit rule, which is that a test has disparate impact if the hiring rate for the minority group is less than 4/5. That is 80%. You see? Because the emphasis is that more of the minority group who have been disadvantaged previously should, of course, be accommodated more in the labor force. And so, because, of course, the majority group is almost 80% of the nation. And you see, the same thing applies in South Africa, where, of course, majority group may not be employed. Majority of them may not be employed. Why the minority group, those who were advantaged, may have even almost 80% of them employed. Okay, so for future state that a test has disparate impact if the hiring rate for the minority, and in this case, South Africa majority group, is less than, of course, 4/5 of the population. And of course, one way to measure this 4/5 issue, of course, include, of course, what is known as a standard deviation, to calculate, of course, whether a group of those who were previously disadvantaged are, of course, well represented in the labor force. All right. So this is referred to disparate impact, which occurs when a facially neutral employment practice disproportionately excludes a protected group for employment opportunities. We progress. Another aspect with regards to discrimination is what is known as reasonable accommodation. Reasonable accommodation places a special obligation, and you see, places a special obligation on an employer to affirmatively accommodate. Affirmatively, this has to do with affirmative action. To affirmatively accommodate an individual's disability or religion. This is actually applicable more to disability and religion. Can you see? That somebody should be accommodated based on the fact that he or she is disabled. And of course, on the basis of religion. For instance, now, a Muslim should be accommodated in a specific workplace, and of course, given all right entitled to a Muslim in reasonable accommodating that Muslim candidate. For instance, knowing that Muslims pray 5 times a day, definitely you should accommodate them when it is time for prayer, when they leave. I remember when I was working in the more closer to the northern part of Nigeria, which is the capital of Nigeria, Abuja. I remember during my time at the CBN that there are specific times my Muslim colleagues normally go for their prayers. And you will know when they are going for their prayers. At times they go in groups, and you know that, oh, your colleagues from the Muslim religions are not in the office at a particular hour. And that is because the organization have reasonably also accommodated them on the basis of their religion. And see. So the same thing also applies to a country that is a Christian country, particularly like America, that emphasize Christianity as their major religion. That, of course, they should reasonably accommodate somebody from a different religion on the basis of their religion. And of course, that also applies to disability. And you remember in one of the slides that I shared, I also revealed to you how Canada is doing very well in terms of reasonably accommodating some people with disability in Canada. And I made you to also understand that some of these disabled individuals have special traits that can, of course, be a source of powerful talent to the organization. You see. But the fact of the matter is that employers are sometimes reluctant to employ disabled people, particularly mentally impaired individuals. You see. But of course, reasonable accommodation places a special obligation on an employer to affirmatively accommodate an individual's disability or religion. All right. So these are the different forms of discrimination in the workplace that are, of course, legally binding, and of course, that we see in most of the workplace, the workplaces in the US. And of course in Africa, in South Africa, and other places. Now, another aspect is retaliation for participation and opposition. I think we mentioned this when we were listing some of the discriminatory areas where we can notice a visibility of discrimination when somebody participates in a case that is against the organization he is working for. Can you see? So retaliation for participation. Title 7 states that employers cannot retaliate against employee for either opposing a perceived illegal employment practices. Can you see? Illegal employment practices. And of course, in South Africa, it is also referred to as, I think I mentioned that earlier on. I'll come back to that when it comes back to my mind. Illegal employment practices or participating in a proceeding. Is it participating in a case related to an alleged illegal employment practice? Can you see? Illegal employment practice. You say, however, employees, in spite of this, that employers cannot retaliate. However, employees do not have an unlimited right to talk about how racist or sexist their employers are. You see, you don't have an unlimited. You see, you don't have an unlimited. You see, right. You don't have an unlimited right to talk about how racist or sexist your employer is. Utilize the internal China first before going public. Can you see? They always advise utilize the internal China of the organization to, of course, tell them that their practices is not good. Try to convince them if it's possible to change them before. If you still notice that they continue with their unethical practices, then that is only when you can, of course, go public. Like the case of Snowden in America, who reported some of the unethical practices in the American intelligence services to the world. Can you see? So Snowden, yeah, his name is Snowden. That is the surname. I don't know if most of you were familiar with that particular case. Right? So, however, employees do not have an unlimited right to talk about how racist or sexist their employers are. You see. Utilize the internal China first before going public. We progress. The next topic is, the next special topics, of course, include sexual harassment, affirmative action and reverse discrimination, and outcomes of Americans with Disability Act. Outcomes of Americans with Disability Act. And of course, sexual harassment, you will still come across it in your recommended textbook when you get to that topic. But make sure you read the remaining part. You remember I had asked you to read up to chapter 13, which was the slide I first sent to you. And now I have sent the main manuscript of the book. And you should read from chapter 14 to 21. All right. And like I told you, some of the content of each chapter of that textbook could be just about 3 pages or 4 pages. So they are just short manuscripts that, of course, gives you a kind of workshop-like analysis of diversity-related matters. All right. Now let's talk about sexual harassment in the workplace, which is a very, very important and critical aspect of diversity. And of course, a very important aspect of discrimination. You remember when I was listing about possible discrimination in South African workplace, where issues of sexual harassment surfaced or emerged, or were, of course, part of the catalog. So when we talk about sexual harassment is actually unwelcome sexual advances. You see, when you portray or when you show some unwelcome sexual advances or requests for sexual favors or other verbal or physical contact of a sexual nature, can you see? All this constitute what is known as sexual harassment. And of course, there are caveats that we have to keep in mind. Constitute sexual harassment when, those are the caveats, when one, submission to such conduct is made either explicitly or implicitly a term or condition of an individual's employment. And you see, when this is made as a term, when the request for sexual favor or sexual advances are made either explicitly or implicitly a term or condition of an individual's employment. For instance, requesting a sexual favor for promotion. Yes, if you at least surrender to my request, then I will put your name in the list of next promotion. Or for pay package, or for transfer reasons. So submission to such conduct is made either explicitly or implicitly a term or condition of an individual's employment. Number two, this next COVID is that submission to or rejection of such conduct by an individual is used as the basis of employment decision affecting such individual. You see, that is to say, if you agree or disagree, will be used against you, or will be used in your favor if agreed. Can you see? Submission or rejection to such conduct by an individual is used as a basis of employment decision affecting such an individual. Then number three, caveat is that such conduct has the purpose or effect of unreasonably interfering with an individual's work performance. Such conduct of harassment has the purpose or effect of unreasonably interfering with an individual's work performance or creating an intimidating, hostile, or offensive working environment. You see? Under such circumstances, can one claim an issue of sexual harassment? That is to say that you that is harassed must not be the person who is encouraging the harassment. You see? So such conduct has the purpose or effect of unreasonably interfering with an individual's work performance or creating an intimidating, hostile, or offensive working environment. All right. So these are the three conditions that one can satisfy when you bring a claim of sexual harassment or when you complain about sexual harassment against any colleague in the workplace. All right. And of course, with regards to sexual harassment, there are two types of sexual harassment. The first one is what is known as quid pro quo harassment. And the second one is known as hostile working environment. With regards to quid pro quo harassment, that is saying it straightforward that you need a sexual favor. And of course, if the person is able to provide that, yeah, definitely this and this will happen, either in terms of promotion, in terms of salary increase, in terms of favor. That is direct request for sexual favor. That is what is known as quid pro quo harassment or sexual harassment. Another aspect of sexual harassment or another type of sexual harassment is hostile working environment. So that is to say that it is not just a matter of asking for sexual favor, but there are instances where you create a hostile working environment for an opposite sex. then that can, of course, be regarded as a sexual harassment. In fact, I was discussing with one colleague some time back, and at least she was actually giving me a story of how his husband almost lost his job for displaying a kind of the nakedness of a woman on his computer. Can you see? And it was, of course, a nude picture on his computer. And it was considered as sexual harassment, you know. But of course, he was able to actually reflect that it was not a deliberate act, and that, of course, saved him. So there are certain behaviors that you may, of course, exhibit in the workplace that may be offensive to your colleague, particularly if people are sharing the same office. Although you may not even know that you are offending the next person, but it could be construed as a hostile work environment. So therefore, we must be very, very vigilant, careful in terms of what we do in the office, with regards to, particularly when it comes to issues of sexual harassment. All right, progress. Sexual harassment, we're talking about 3 critical conditions for sexual harassment case to stand. You see, for you to bring a sexual harassment case, or for you to report a sexual harassment case, or that you have been sexually harassed, and of course, become a plaintiff to bring about a case to an authority, there are 3 conditions that you must fulfill. The first one is that the plaintiff cannot have invited or incited the advances. That is to say that you that is presenting the case, or you, the plaintiff, should not be the person who have actually invited or incited the advancement. And you see, for instance, maybe you come to the office and you started displaying a certain sexual move that can make the other gender to think that, oh, it's an invitation or attraction. Maybe there's something in your mind. Can you see? And maybe the other one now decide to advance. So you, the plaintiff, cannot have invited or incited the advances. I know that some people say you can look but don't act. But also, if the accused is able to prove that, of course, with camera evidence or with other evidence, that you actually encouraged this and he misread your behavior or your actions, then definitely you may not have a case. So the plaintiff cannot have invited or incited the advances. So that is one condition with regards to bringing up a case of sexual harassment. Number 2 is that harassment must have been severe. You see, you have to also prove that the harassment, if you are a plaintiff bringing a case of harassment, you must also prove that the harassment must have been severe to you, must have been terribly bad to you. You see. And of course, number 3 is that the court must also determine the ability of the organization. The court must also determine the liability of the organization for actions of the employees. That is to say that not only the employee or the accused will face the issue of sexual harassment in found guilty, the court also must also look into the liability of the organization in terms of enforcing sexual harassment rules or laws within the organization. Can you see? And of course, there are also other preventative steps to be taken with regards to sexual harassment cases in organization. The first step to be taken by an organization is that sexual harassment policy must be included in the policy statement or sexual harassment issues must be included in the policy statement of an organization, where organization will certainly state that these are the policies covering sexual harassment. And anybody that breaks this policy will certainly be disciplined or will certainly be shown the way out of the organization. Another preventative step for sexual harassment is training. Employees should be trained on sexual harassment. Employees need to know the nitty-gritty around sexual harassment. For instance, issues of course, a hostile work environment. There are instances where employee may not even understand what it means or the parameters of judging what is hostile within a work environment to an opposite gender. You see. Or when a joke goes expensive to turn into a sexual harassment issue. And of course, there should be a reporting mechanism with regards to sexual harassment. That is to say, if it is a senior colleague or your manager that is perpetrating sexual harassment, there should be an alternative reporting mechanism where you can report your manager or boss with regards to sexual harassment. And of course, the disciplinary policy of the organization must also reinforce issues of sexual harassment, that anybody who perpetrates sexual harassment will certainly be disciplined within an organization. These are some of the steps or preventative ways to, of course, avoid or minimize sexual harassment in the workplace. All right. Affirmative action and reverse discrimination. We have already spoken about this. And of course, that of course reinforces, Benito's statement on affirmative action, and of course, Wikitas position on affirmative action. That there are certain authorities who perceive affirmative action as reverse discrimination, where those that were perceived to be previously advantaged are now feeling disadvantaged as a result of affirmative action. So we have discussed issues around affirmative action with regards to South African laws. Affirmative action was conceived of as a way of taking extra effort to attract and retain minority employees. In the case of South Africa, majority employees. And you see, and of course, impose quota program, as affirmative action impose quota programs. The entire debate over affirmative action continues to evoke attention. Now, with regards to quota program, I remember, of course, in terms of India, I spoke to you about the caste system in India. The fact that there were people who were perceived previously as the lower caste. And these lower castes have actually accepted their fate as the lower caste of the society, the poorest of the poor. And I told you, right from the independence of South Africa, the government of Jawaharlal Nehru have made effort, and of course that of Mahatma Gandhi Congress have made effort to address the issues of the lower caste. And as a result of this, they created a quota system for the scheduled caste, or the scheduled class, which is of course the lower class. That is why in the universities there are seats that are reserved for the scheduled class, and in some instances they don't occupy most of these seats. You see that actually give them an opportunity to education, because many of them have accepted their fate, that their work should be at the lower cadre of society, building houses, tying roads with their hands, and of course, as racial pullers. If you know racial pulling, somebody carrying people on bicycle. You must have been seeing that in televisions nowadays, in BBC or in CNN, when they reflect activities in Asian region, like India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and of course, Thailand, and of course, the other country around Pakistan and Nepal, where somebody maybe riding bicycle, pulling other people seated at the back of the bicycle. Can you see? So that has been a kind of job or the profession of the lower class. But now, in recognition of this, the Indian government started a quota system to accommodate them. And of course, this is also reflected also in Nigeria quota system, where of course certain people from certain regions can access university with a lower grade in terms of JAMB result, and in terms of course, their school side to courses in Nigeria university because of quota system. And in the long run, everybody that comes out from the university has equal opportunity to access job play. But of course, also with regards to federal government job, quota system, people are still, quota system is still reserved for certain people. So these are all issues of affirmative action. So the entire debate over affirmative action continues to evoke attention. The debate over affirmative action continues to evoke attention, not only in South Africa, but also in America. Another part of the world, even the issues of quota system continues to be a debate in Nigeria. Issues of quota system, issues of federal character continue to be a debate in Nigeria. You see. So it is not just restricted to South Africa, where people debate with regards to affirmative action. And of course, the perception of a reverse discrimination. All right, we progress. So American with Disability Act. This is an act that protects people with disability in America. What are the outcomes? Under ADA, a firm must make reasonable accommodation to physically or mentally disabled individual. To a physically or mentally disabled individual, unless doing so will impose undue hardship. Unless doing so will impose undue hardship. And I gave you a story during my secondary school time that, of course, we have a teacher who later started developing mental traits. And not just only in my school, even in one of the adjoining schools close to my school, where a teacher has, of course, mental disability. And after some time or within some time, the teacher can, of course, start blabbing other things and start acting. And other teachers will hold him, bundle him into a car, and take him elsewhere where the student doesn't know. So that could also be dangerous for students. Can you see? Because such kind of a teacher can take a knife and stab a student, and the teacher may not have a case to answer because they will check his mental state of mind, which of course will, save him from law that he's a mental patient. And of course, he has acted not with his normal eyes. Can you see? So these are issues. According to the American with Disability Act, a firm or an organization must make reasonable accommodation to a physically or mentally disabled individual, unless doing so would impose undue hardship. Can you see? So if doing so will, of course, lead to the death of other members of the organization, when the mentally impaired person begin to act, then it is always safe to avoid recruiting such kind of individual. So consequences of American with Disability Act is that, in fact, American with Disability Act, instead of solving the problem, triggered so many litigations. So many litigations were coming up with many people with disability claiming that they have not been reasonably accommodated in the workplace. And of course, cases that were filed over the years did not actually reflect the intention of the Congress or congressional intention of America. You see, they were a total departure from actually the original interest or the original intent of that particular act. And of course, the law has not resulted in a major increase in the proportion of people with disability. Can you see? The so-called American with Disability Act did not result in a major increase in the number of people with disability that were employed. Can you see? So those were, of course, some of the consequences that were, of course, empirically noticed with regards to the Act. Progress. The next one is, of course, this is not strongly related to diversity, but of course, we can touch on it a little bit because somehow it can, of course, affect diversity when somebody from a disadvantaged group is placed in a very unsafe working environment. So employee safety is regulated both by both federal and state government. So the Occupational Safety and Health Act, which is, of course, in South Africa, it is, of course, known as Health and Safety Act. You see. And of course, it's, of course, a general duty of course, the Department of Labor to also look, make sure that the working environment is not, of course, unsafe for employees working in a given organization. All right. And of course, there are certain rights of employee under Occupational Safety and Health Act. The first one, and also with regards to South Africa, with regards to Health and Safety Act in South Africa, an employee has a right to request for an inspection of a particular workplace if they suspect that the place is unsafe for them to work. An employee has a right to have a representative present at the inspection of that particular place. And of course, an employee has a right under Occupational Safety and Health Act to have dangerous substances identified in a particular workplace. And of course, employee has a right to promptly inform about exposure. You see, when he or she is exposed to affluent or unsafe condition in the workplace or unsafe environment in the workplace, he has a right to promptly inform about the exposure. You see, exposure to issues, exposure to hazard, and of course, giving access to accurate record regarding such exposure. And of course, employee has a right under Occupational Safety and Health Act to have employer violations posted at work sites. So these are some of the rights of employees with regards to Occupational Safety and Health Act in the United States. And of course, this is also a right that is also visible within the South African workspace. All right. And of course, we'll come to the next one, which is, of course, in terms of occupational safety and health inspections, citations, and penalty. The Occupational Safety and Health Act inspectors are conducted by compliance officers. Okay, so they are conducted by compliance officers, specifically trained Department of Labor agents. Okay, so specifically trained Department of Labor agents. And of course, violation result in a citation to the employer. And of course, an employer and organization can, of course, have the kind of criminal and civil case to answer, as well as penalties imposed on them for, of course, breaching the rules of related to occupational safety and health within the workplace. All right. And of course, with regards to safety-related matters, safety awareness programs in the workplace. Safety awareness programs attempt to instill symbolic and substantive changes to safety programs. Third component of safety awareness program is one, identify and communicate job hazards. It's very important to identify and communicate job hazard to employees. Job hazard analysis technique is used in terms of that. And of course, technique of operational review is also used with regards to component of safety, identification and communication of safety hazard. Number two, reinforce safe practices. Reinforce safe practices based on, of course, the identify job hazard within the workplace. And number three, promote safety internationally. Can you see? Promote safety internationally. Those are, of course, a component of safety awareness program within the workplace. All right, we'll come to the conclusion. One of the human resources management major challenges is the legal constraint imposed by the government. HR and the line managers need to understand legal requirements and prohibitions to manage their businesses in ways that are financially and ethically sound. And in so doing, they will also create a competitive advantage. Thank you very much. All right. So colleagues, for the next 15 minutes, do you want to take a comfort break? Before we move to the next slide. Okay, everybody want to take comfort break, okay? Take a comfort break of 15 minutes and come back. Okay, thank you very much, colleagues. Right.